To me, engagement is the most important thing. And I don't mean it just talking to people, but having the hard conversations. We have the kind of unenviable task where a lot of people think that, oh, in HR, you just have to like people, you have to be nice. Like, actually, no, that's the easy part. The difficult part is encouraging people and managers and teaching them how to have difficult conversations with your people. And typically, that's the part that people refrain from. And ironically, that's where it goes south because actually we're here to uplift your performance and also uplift the company's performance. And HR's responsibility then is to help our managers, help everyone uplift that performance.
Welcome to the HR Impact Show, where we have honest conversations with global people leaders about their journey in building great workspaces. I am your host, Fung, the VP of Customer Success at EngageRocket. EngageRocket is a HR and advisory company that leverages data to help our clients understand how to best build meaningful employee experiences from hire to retire. Today, we're joined by Benjamin Festin, Vice President of Human Resources at SP Group, a leading utilities provider driving sustainable solutions in Singapore and across the region. With over 2 decades of experience, Ben has led workforce transformation and talent development across diverse organizations, such as SP Group, Dairy Farm, Mediacorp, and even consulting giants like Accenture and Ernst Young. We're excited to dive into his experience building future-ready teams, leveraging on data to attract and retain key talents, as well as what it's like to build meaningful employee experiences in a critical industry. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Hi, Fung.
It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you.
So I think we're going to start a little bit with understanding about your career trajectory so far. You've worked across diverse organizations like SP Group, Dairy Farms, Mediacorp, and even some consulting giants like Accenture and EY. What are some standout moments in your career that shaped your approach to HR?
My consulting career, interestingly enough, was human capital, change management. So a lot of it was about change and help them through changes and transitions. In a similar vein, that was what excited me about consulting. But after a while, I decided a bit of change of pace, and then I went into the corporate world. In corporate as well, I realized what resonated most wasn't the BAU per se, it was taking people through changes, recognizing what needed to be changed, and recognizing and how to bring people through that change. So every time we had to change, whether it was core values, change of a system, different implementation, those are the things that really excited me the most.
In terms of what are some of the more recent changes that you've
Right.
initiated that maybe you're most excited
Yeah,
about?
there were quite a few. Actually, this year has been the year of changes.
Okay.
So we refreshed our leadership competencies. That's something we're quite proud of. And actually, I wouldn't even say we're done yet. While we've announced it, we're actually going to do an assessment at the end of this year, rather. And we're going to actually run through that for the first time and take people through that exercise as well. So that's going to be an interesting journey. It's not like we haven't done that previously, but we've refreshed it as well. And we've made some marked changes to how we're looking at it. So in particular, one of those things that people often get a bit worried about is that if this is a leadership competency and a platform for development of your leadership capabilities, is that part of my performance appraisal? Basic things like this, which are very change management focused and taking them through, convincing them, and also making sure that they're comfortable with those changes. Of course, let me qualify, I think changes are not always nice. So making sure that people are comfortable, but at the same time, making sure that people understand why those are necessary. Leadership competencies was a big change for us. We've also refreshed our technical competencies, or what we still call skills passport. So the skills passport was a technical competency framework that is for largely our grid workers and technical people. So that has gone through a bit of a refresh because every 2 years or 3 years, the team likes to work with the business, of course, because ultimately they are the domain expert. We've also implemented actually a system that can better track some of these technical competencies for the business leaders as well. Of course, not to mention, we've added questions to our engagement survey too, right, with you guys. That was another interesting change as well. Year of changes.
That's really fantastic to hear. There are multiple areas I would like to dive into just from what you
Sure.
said, but maybe we focusing in on this leadership competency change that you've made. Do you mind sharing a bit more about what was the catalyst to kick off the need for this refresh?
Right. We already had an existing set of leadership competencies to begin with, like I mentioned, but we recognize that in this day and age where things are moving so much faster and we haven't refreshed it for quite a number of years. So in recognition of how fast everything is going, how fast technology is, and the one thing that's consistent is that agility is so important, managing change is so important, understanding the complexities and navigating is so important. So all of those things we took into consideration. So we actually brought someone in to do sort of an outside-in approach where we looked at what other businesses were using and doing from a leadership competency perspective. And then after that, layered that on with some of our realities. Sustainability is a big component of what we do as well. If you're looking at building stronger leaders, that has to be a very critical component.
What are some specific qualities or skills do you think is non-negotiable for leaders of today or the future?
Some of the non-negotiables for me, beyond what I just mentioned, I think is communication and engagement. Something as basic as that. We spoke about this many times, even when we're talking about our own engagement surveys as well, and I'm running it. To me, engagement is the most important thing. And I don't mean it just talking to people, but having the hard conversations. We have the kind of an enviable task where a lot of people think that, oh, in HR, you just have to like people, you have to be nice. Like, actually, no, that's the easy part. The difficult part is encouraging people and managers and teaching them how to have difficult conversations with your people. And typically that's the part that people refrain from. And ironically, that's where it goes south because actually we're here to uplift your performance and also uplift the company's performance. And HR's responsibility then is to help our managers, help everyone uplift that performance. And sometimes it's not nice. It entails having difficult conversations and engagement. That's non negotiable. If you're not someone who is comfortable engaging, that's fine as well. There's a place for you. You can be an individual contributor and all that. But I think as a leader, you definitely have to be comfortable with engagement, having those hard conversations. And those, I think, are skill sets you absolutely must have.
What are some effective strategies or initiatives that you've seen in your
Mm.
previous workplaces to build that sort of competencies or skills in our managers?
Actually, it's nothing like practice, I must say. It's a lot of people think, oh, there's something fancy, or can you send them for a course? There are courses out there
Yeah.
for sure, but even for me, and all honesty, especially if I know I'm going in for a difficult conversation, it's as simple as obviously preparing early is important, knowing where you are, basic logistic stuff like finding a right place, making sure there's ample time for it. All these things are table stakes. But I think the thing I do personally is use the mirror and I practice some of the questions. Conversations are interesting, especially if you're going to put something like difficult feedback on the table. I observe this and realize that this was the outcome, and almost anticipating what could some of the possible answers be, and then also knowing how to frame that properly. To me, that's the effort that you need to put in, and I think a lot of people don't put in that effort. Unfortunately, they just go, "Okay, I'm unhappy." Put their foot down. Come here, 5 minutes. Go have a chat, and that is a wasted opportunity, in my opinion. If you are really genuinely sincere about helping people along to improve, I think you need to spend the time and invest the effort. And that includes the practice upfront and having more of this conversation. So ironically, the solution to engagement is more engagement and spending the effort and time.
You were sharing previously as well, and I understand about the population of employees at SP Group. There's a very diverse population here, spread out across Singapore. You have people in substations and depots. So, what are some strategies that you found effective at SP Group to be able to help employees feel wherever they are located, they are supported and connected with the organization?
So I was the previous chairman of what we call the Recharge Committee. The Recharge is the REC committee. It's a play on words, right? Power and national grid operator, right? Amongst other things in the utilities business generally. Recharge is our REC clubs, but it's a little bit more than that. So a big remit obviously is the recreational aspects, but we take a lot of effort in making sure that's spread out, like you rightly mentioned, because they're everywhere. One of the things that we do are these health talks that are only done virtually. It cuts across a broad spectrum of topics. We have a huge differences in demographics with the kind of people that we have. People who are a little bit older, and people who are still fresh out of school. Then we do that very regularly on a monthly basis. And we also conduct a lot of activities, whether it's social. So social can include even having bazaars or fairs in the office. The new chairman this year is actually having an initiative where he's reaching out to the various depots as well to organize such activities where it's just simple things like free ice cream. But the other thing I'm quite proud of is we have this annual exercise where we provide a complimentary health check. It's not a complete health check, but at least it's blood test, blood pressure, weight. basic things, but we actually do that not just in HQ, but across some of the depots as well. And the reason there is that I think we believe so strongly in wellness. It's just these little things that we do to make sure that while they're out there in the field, they feel included as well.
That does sound really amazing. There are organizations or HR professionals that do think, oh, some of these activities is just a waste of money. Why bother?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, it sounds like you really do believe in some of
Of
these
course.
elements.
Of
And
course.
what has led to that? Quite a strong belief in doing this is good for our employees and good for productivity and good for the
Absolutely.
company.
Absolutely. I mean, it starts from a place of care. So I think showing that you care is quite fundamental for me. And I think for the organization, because we have so many different employees and they're all out there and it's not an easy job. So the joke I will often tell sometimes is that if you're out there on the roads and you're in a jam and then one lane is closed, and then you realize that people working on the road, oftentimes it's us because we're either digging the ground, replacing cables. So it's a tough job. The one way we can really show tangibly that we care is looking after someone's health and wellness. In fact, we take it quite personally and quite strongly to the extent that I think for the past 2 to 3 years, we've had an entire week of SP mental wellness along with just physical health because we believe equally strongly in that. And we actually have a network of allied professionals who help to spot whether people are distressed and if they seem a bit off or a little bit depressed. We actually have a group or network of people there amongst us who look out for these things. So these are the subtle, small things that we do. And I think all of that adds up and aggregates to that. We actually did a review also of our employee value proposition. And we did a very ground up sort of an initiative. And we went to ask a selection of people from our non-executives, the people who work in the field, our technicians, our engineers, and then also our white collar guys in corporate, for example. We actually asked them what they felt was the single most important thing that resonated to them about our culture and what they were proud about. And a lot of them said it's that communal spirit, that willingness to help. And I think it comes from that. If you see that your leaders care, the organization cares about your health, your well-being, I think it resonates. And then that kind of permeates to your people, and then your people start to care about each other. So if you ask me, going back to the, is it worth it? Is absolutely worth it. And there's nothing better than to show with your actions how you care about people.
That makes a lot of sense as to why we tend to see the engagement results going in the green
Yeah.
year on year. So that's really fantastic to hear. Taking a little bit of a turn in terms of the questions. Generally, when people think about the energy sector, they think that it's traditional, that it's old school,
Right.
super technical. So I'm curious to know, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions about either managing talent in the sector or even working in the sector in general?
Right. I mean, to be fair, I can understand where that comes from. I'll cast that net a little bit wider to talk about engineering in general. And the greatest challenge is to actually attract more engineers to stay in the field. We were talking about EVP earlier, and that's the reason why we did it as well. Because are we still able to attract, or how are we able to continue to attract budding engineers to stay in the field, join the field? Because it's not so much that I felt we were unattractive or in fact, not at all. I think we remain attractive. The difference is that engineers now have a whole lot of other choice careers, I would say. They're either going to data analytics, tech, banking, and then I think the common joke is it's all numbers and they're really good at numbers, right? And they're very process oriented and they're so suitable for so many different industries and businesses and roles, right? And then naturally, because there's so much choices for them, that kind of leaves us with less people to stick with engineering. That's why we did the EVP. We had to re-establish and understand again what made us attractive and make sure that we're able to emphasize on those points. So that's, I think, the biggest challenge is actually not so much about managing the talent, it's about ensuring we can bring the right ones in. And the other one is ensuring we stay continually attractive as a career of choice, actually. So the EVP was helpful. So we're trying to weave in some of those EVPs like the communal spirit, the kind of culture, the kind of environment that we have. We are actually re-emphasizing and restating what's the value proposition for us as an employer and as a career almost in engineering and how exciting that is. Understanding some of those things.
Because you can't run away from it being technical, you can't run away from
Exactly.
it being challenging and
Exactly.
long term. So I assume it's more about how you make the whole organization better suited to attract the talent that you need.
Agree. So you're right, absolutely. And it's one of those things that when we were doing the exercise, we knew we can't change who we are. But I think the emphasis, and as when I was sharing with the team too, that we need to play to our strength. Being able to showcase what's exciting about us and what we do then lends a different slant. That EVP exercise was important to just re-establish and remind ourselves who we are and what we are good at, and just emphasizing those things that are attractive to people.
I suppose that's where data really plays a big role in actually understanding what
Right.
employees want. So, coming back to earlier when you're talking about agility in your employees, very recently I had a conversation with a friend who works in the energy sector, and he was sharing with me how, with the influx of EVs, this is posing a huge threat to the power grids because people are not realizing when you're purchasing new EVs and more, the more popular EVs become, the more stress is going to put on the grid. I can barely understand the technicals, but it made me think about the fact that your employees have a challenge of being on the fact that a lot of these power grids would probably be operating off very old technologies,
right.
possibly, and even old materials. Yet at the same time, there's so many new challenges, almost unpredictable challenges, because 5 to 10 years ago, who really thought about
Yeah.
EVs, right? So, how do you build within your employee population that idea of we need to still maintain what we need to maintain, but we still have to be really agile and innovative in terms of looking at the future?
I must say that's one of the things that we're really good at. And I'm so proud to share that as an organization, it really plans so far ahead. I was alluding to how people were digging on the road, and a lot of people don't realize and notice this, but there are no power lines on the road if you think about it. And everything is underground. And so if you can imagine how much planning goes into planning the tunnels, digging the tunnels, competing needs, MRT is a great example of competing needs. There's so much real estate underground too, as I tell people. And so a lot of that future focus has been inbuilt into the culture and to the way we work and plan. The guys who work on the grid, I mean, they're quite amazing. We often say you're not planning for yourself, you're planning probably for your kids, your grandkids. We do take a lot of steps and initiatives to do that. That emphasis on technology has always been there. So, in fact, in the power grid business, they do a technology day every year where they highlight and feature new technology that they're either using or piloting, and celebrate things that they've done, and also bring in sometimes potentially speakers, for instance, to share about new technologies. So that's one of those ways where you seed and embed that into the business. Recently, at the risk department, they actually had a regular group risks day. There's always a topic every year. And this year was about AI and generative AI and the possibilities. And on the flip side, then what are the risks involved, right? And then how do we manage those risks? So I think all these things that we do within the organization help to seed some of these thoughts that are so important. But when it comes to learning and development, so even on my side, like the learning team, we work with the business. Bottom up, we have an initiative that we call like the Learning Roadmap 2030. It's sort of a bottom-up initiative with the learning representatives and the L&D team, where we ask the businesses, what do they foresee in the future? What are these emerging skills, especially the technical ones, that may impact the business in future, or what do we need to know or make sure that people are abreast of? So we've identified a few of these skills for the future. So it either enhance some of the curriculum that we have today, if it's a bit more near term, but it's further afield. In fact, we worked with our ATO. They are what we call SIPG. So it's the Singapore Institute of Power and Gas. So they're the ATO for the energy sector. And we work with them sometimes to develop, is there new content that we need to develop and teach or train our people? So there are a couple of things that we're trying to do there to, I wouldn't dare say forecast the future, but prepare for it.
What I'm really keen on understanding a bit more is when you talk about the fact that SP has been very successful in embedding the idea of future thinking in your employees, and that's part of the culture. So let's say you're speaking to another HR leader who is finding challenges in that sense that they feel that their employees are always just thinking about the short term, management thinking short term. What are some key strategies or best practices could you advise another organization so that they can build that kind of perspectives in their employees?
What we've typically done so far is actually, for me personally, it always starts with leaders first. So what I mean by that is, as a leader, you shape the culture, you shape the ecosystem for your team. If you're one that doesn't encourage learning, doesn't encourage development, just do your job, that kind of thing, and it doesn't even encourage you to make certain mistakes and learn from them, or rather give your people the opportunity to learn from them, then I think it's really challenging to see this kind of long-term thinking. So when I say it starts with the leaders, it must be people who are advocates for learning, advocates for development, almost encouraging you. And if it means that almost having to prioritize learning or development as focal, as important, right? And it's just beyond just doing your day job and getting your KPIs done. If the leaders just say, no, you just get your stuff done, this is your KPI, make sure stuff is done, and you don't have any emphasis or placement on time, on development, or to think about other things, then that's your environment. So the leader is really important to me in how you frame and shape that.
Because culture always comes from the top, right?
Exactly. So yeah, how you want to shape it. To me, that's the simplest thing. You are what you become. If you are that way, then guess what? Your folks are going to be like that as well.
That's a very good point. I think how growth mindset then links to actually future thinking. Okay, so I do want to move on to everybody's favorite topic, predictive analytics and AI. Beyond the hype, what practical applications of these technologies have you seen to be most impactful, either in your work or the work of your colleagues and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many applications to this as part of job transformation, even simple things that seem so time consuming. There are initiatives like just ensuring that work is done. For example, with many different substations, and sometimes someone's got to do maintenance of the facility, grass cutting, simple things like that, things that people don't think of. And we use AI to monitor whether the job has been done or not as well. So has the grass been cut? And all it takes is a couple of photos before and after to approve and sign off on work, for instance. So it's very basic things like this, but make a huge amount of difference. Closer to home, or rather closer to HR, for example, we've actually instituted bots to help us to deal with the transactional from a recruitment point of view. And that kind of helps us also filter candidates who we think would be more suitable or less suitable. Still a work in progress. Nonetheless, we're using some of these basic things to speed up the efficiencies. On a personal front, productivity-wise, I use it for so many things, sharpening certain things that I want to frame. I have the basic idea, but it just takes a lot of effort to frame that into something. But those are some of the small productivity hacks, apart from planning your holiday.
Yes.
And the itinerary, of course, which is everyone's favorite thing to do.
Are you one of the subscribers to how AI is going to take over the world, take over our jobs?
Ironically, it's interesting that you talked about it. And the one thing that my common refrain, and I think it's such a game changer, and you cannot run away from it and you have to embrace it. This is going to be funny, but recently I had my daughter, she was going to be featured in a school publication, and she had written a nice short essay in Mandarin, handwritten, of course. And then there was a request from the teacher to say, I need this typed out. And I went, oh dear, I can type perfectly well in English. Mandarin is a bit of a struggle because you have to use Hanyu Pinyin, then it's going to take such a long time. It's not natural for me, obviously. And so I had a brainwave and I took a photo and I put it through ChatGPT and I said, here, go transcribe this. And lo and behold, it did. But here's where the punchline is. Had I not checked, there were so many words that were not correct because it was handwritten. And to be fair, it had about 90% right and 10% that was not. And then I had to go manually change that. So I think my punchline here and sharing that story was, it's a great help, wonderful to use, but that's 90% of the way. In fact, ChatGPT has a qualifier there that says basically he makes mistakes. It will help tremendously, and people are not wrong that it's a buddy. But I think what's important is that you do not rely on it singularly. That's the caution I would have as well. And so I do not think it will take over the world. In fact, it will make us smarter because we're now having to critique what it gives us, right? And it hallucinates as well, and you've got to catch it when it does. That's why I would go back for leadership competencies, the agility, all that is important because learning how to do that and being receptive to it, still having your own point of view and still appreciating the technology, but not relying on it. I think that's important.
So we are talking about the future. AI is already here. We're talking about what it looks like 5, 10 years down the line. But I'm curious to hear your perspective as to what does the ideal workplace of the future looks like to you?
The ideal workplace, I think I'm quite happy in the sense that we have the technology that supports what we're doing right now. I never imagined having another tool that can help me craft better narratives, plan, itemize my time or plan my time, find obscure pieces of passage from somewhere. Google was great, but AI is so much better. The technology is there and it will only evolve. But I think, to me, still going back to first principles about the ideal workplace, and that is being able to recognize people for the work that they do and having a safe environment in terms of being able to share your ideas, being able to have a place that people are receptive to ideas and almost are able to spar yet respect each other's points of view. The interesting thing is that the technology has changed over time, but certain things are table stakes, right? What a great culture looks like is table stakes. To me, I think the ideal workplace of the future will be evolving technology to make us more efficient, but yet still harnessing those tried, true, and tested things about culture that we all like. A safe place to share your ideas, to share your views, to feel welcome, to embrace diversity, to be inclusive. Those things don't change. Hopefully, we have a very healthy dose of technology to help us be more efficient. I think that would be.
At the end of the day, the people are the ones that are going to probably stay the same. Human nature doesn't really change so much over the decades, but technology moves so fast. Workplaces, physical workspaces move so fast. But the people, which is why the people first perspective is something I resonate with as well.
I mean, even with what the government is doing lately, for example, flexible work arrangements, it's nice and it's welcome that a lot of people see it as a chance to work from home. But I think the broader theme here is being inclusive and welcoming maybe traditional demographics that were not so prepared to come back into the workforce. So a good example is people who have to take care of young children at home and they don't have alternative support in terms of care. But having flexible work arrangements then allows a new group of talent to come back into the workforce, which were typically not receptive.
But we've also noticed a trend where a lot of tech companies are mandating that 5-day work week, back in office situation. But which direction do you think organizations are more likely to head? And in your opinion, which one do you think serves productivity better?
Yeah. Oh, this is the $1 million question. So everyone's on the fence, or at least the ones who haven't made a decision are on the fence. So everyone is seeing where this is going. I think as a general perspective, the government has done a great job in at least setting the right tone. And that is, it's not taboo anymore. But typically, I think as Singaporean efficiency, which we are all proud of, we have a process in place, or at least you should have a process in place now for flexible work arrangement. But which serves productivity? I think it really depends on the job. For us, right now, for instance, the people in the field can't do that. If I don't have to go at the jobs and being specific, I think productivity is really dependent on either the kind of job that you do, and a lot of it actually depends on the relationship you have with your employees. So if you're one that is notwithstanding the job requirements or anything like that, but if it's someone that you trust, and there's a trusting relationship between the boss and the employee, then that flexibility and knowing that managed by objective, you get a very good piece of work wherever this person is, then sure. But if there is a lack of trust to begin with, obviously the productivity gets eroded, because half the time what's probably happening if the person's working from home is you have one guy thinking, is he working from home? Is he working or not? And that's time, right? Which you could spend doing something else rather than being hounded. If you don't have any trust between employee or boss, it's a recipe for disaster, I think, and productivity regardless.
So maybe the keyword here is trust, and also the flexibility, being flexible to, depending on the role, depending on the situation, depending on the employee, maybe even not so much a blanket overall forceful.
It is. And it's a vicious cycle, because I think if you think of it from both perspectives, as an employee, you go, but you don't trust me. And then as someone who is supervising this particular employee, so far the work that you've produced hasn't instilled a lot of trust in me either. How do you break out of that cycle? I think that's important before anything else.
Many organizations struggle to move from reacting to trends as opposed to shaping them. So earlier to your point about how there are companies who still have yet to decide about whether they want to go fully working from office or working from home or anywhere in between. So I was wondering if you could share your thoughts or any examples about how you've seen this done effectively, moving from purely reactionary as a HR function to actually actively shaping strategies.
Unfortunately, I think you can't entirely move away from being reactionary. There's a certain amount of that, not just in HR, but any form of business. In fact, I think that's valued almost if they're able to react and pivot quite quickly. But at the same time, it really depends on the cycle or the season of business that you're in, or the season that your business is in, to be specific. If you're really surviving and you're just thinking about the next quarter, there's little to say about thinking forward. Your forward is, can we make the revenue that we need to survive? And then this whole aspect of thinking too much ahead really goes out the window. I often quote Maslow's hierarchy of needs, really. If you're looking and thinking about survival, then self-actualization is so far away. If you're fortunate enough and you have basic needs met, then stopping to pause for breath is so important. If you want to look ahead and be forward-looking and look at what you've done so far and where that's leading you to. I talked a little bit about the EVP, and that's what was born out of that exercise. And also thinking about things like the learning roadmap, talking with my leaders and talking with my team. Those were born out of moments where I could catch a breath and have a chance to talk to people about nothing more than just BU stuff. That we met this target, where we were at the project. It's being able to invest time. So all I'll say is, again, time, practice, time. I talked about practice earlier, and then now I talk about time. Those things are so important. And then setting aside time to think, giving myself the opportunity to think things through.
You've given me a great segue, actually.
Sure.
Because
Have I?
now I'm going to put you a little bit on your toes by asking you
Whoa.
some rapid fire
Sure.
questions. So we do love to ask our guests this because we think it helps us to get to know the Ben behind the VP a little bit more.
Oh dear.
So no pressure to think too
Okay.
hard about it. We just go with what first
Right.
comes to mind, and I'll just shoot question after
Sure.
question. You ready?
I am, I
Okay.
think.
So what is your go-to productivity hack?
ChatGPT. Absolutely.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Dust yourself off and try again.
Who's that from?
It's actually from a song.
Oh, is it?
No, it's an earlier song. Someone did tell me something like that. Something similar, but it's similar to failing fast.
Fail
right?
fast.
But I
right.
think beyond just failing fast, you need to get on your bike and go try again. I think that's important. So that's trying.
What is one book you think every HR leader should read?
Oh, leaders eat last.
Ah, that's a great one. What's one thing you wish more employees understood about HR?
Oh, my favorite as well. Okay, I'm going to say something quite controversial.
Go for it.
We're not nice people. We're not there to be nice people. Oh, HR, you have to be nice. I think that's the biggest misconception for me. It's not that we're not nice people, but in the sense that, oh, but this is my circumstance. You need to deal with my circumstance. And the reality is actually, I think to me, HR, and the most important thing, and that's why the job is difficult, and happy to continue being in the role, because it's about being fair and equitable. Everyone's got a situation, everyone's got a different circumstance. But ultimately, we have to administer and run the organization fairly. Everyone is an equally contributing member of the team with different circumstances. But how do we administer and treat everyone fairly and equitably? And that will come at some cost. And that includes some people will end up not being very happy. Oh, certain policies don't make sense for me. And don't get me wrong, let me qualify this before, oh my God, I become a meme.
Okay, that'd be a great name.
Yeah, I know it'll be wonderful. But I just want to qualify that, of course, you have to be understanding. Of course, you have to be receptive. But at the same time, I think the biggest misconception is that we're these nice people with flowers and roses and pat you in the back and be all nice. Because actually, the toughest part of the job is to be fair and be equitable, despite different people from different backgrounds with different roles and jobs. How do you be consistent, stay consistent, and administer the function and do your job? So that's the toughest thing, and treat people based on those policies the same.
After all, you only have a fixed amount of resources, right? It's not like you
Exactly.
can meet everyone's needs
Yes.
100% of the time.
yes.
So I get that 100%.
Yeah.
Final one.
Sure.
What excites you most about 2025?
Oh, wow. So many things, actually. I think professionally, there's so many things that I want to roll out. Quite a number of projects, be it on the talent front, on the talent acquisition front as well. I think the projects that are coming are going to be amazing. A lot of them are either AI related or productivity related for sure. So I'm really excited about that. And a lot of them are bottom up from the team and suggestions from the team. So it's also about making them feel part of the process and be happy, right, as well. So yeah, personally, my son's going to Sec 1 next year. So I'm looking forward to it because it's a milestone for him and I can't wait to see.
And for you.
Yeah, it'll be different kind of fun as a parent.
Thank you so much, Benjamin, for your time today.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. If you found the conversation valuable, do like and subscribe to our podcasts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast app. You can also learn more about the show and subscribe to our community at engagerocket.co/HR impact. See you in the next episode.